Lawyers on both the prosecution side and the defense side eagerly preparing for the trial against George Zimmerman. Jury selection set to start in about a month, but can a fair jury be picked in Seminole County? Earlier, Kelly Cook sat down with News 13's legal analyst NeJame to get some perspective on the upcoming trial.
Hard to believe the George Zimmerman trial is coming up very quickly. Next month, it will be underway. Joining us right now is our News 13 legal analyst, NeJame. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure always.
And it was a big deal when earlier they had the defense waived its right to its stand your ground hearing. Let's bring people up to speed because it was a little confusing by what that meant. Why would they do this, and do you think it was a good idea?
I think it was a strategic move, and I think it was a good idea. I think the reality of it is that this case has evolved into a good old-fashioned self-defense case as the facts have been coming out and as the matters unfolded. I think that the defense probably presumed that they were not going to prevail in that, and if they did, they would have to put George Zimmerman on the stand. It was the only way they could even have a hope, and that is if they had George Zimmerman on the stand. And that would be a prosecutor's dream, to have a defendant on the stand 3 weeks before trial. And so I think that they simply opined that it was best to try to integrate or incorporate a stand your ground hearing into the trial itself. And then that way they could avoid the hearing and then still have the judge make a ruling at the conclusion of the trial.
But in your opinion, at some point, George Zimmerman has got to take the stand, correct?
One would think so. This is going to be a hard case without it. But if the forensics bear it out, remember, there's certain things we've not really seen yet. We don't know what the experts are going to say, or if there's any new opinions that have come out as it relates to the enhancement of the 911 tape where you hear somebody crying, "Help me, help me." I've always believed that whoever's voice that is, that was the person, the other person was the aggressor. The other person was the more dominant person, simply because there was somebody on the ground saying, "Help me, help me." If in fact it was George Zimmerman, I think that he's got a better chance of an acquittal. If it turns out that it was Trayvon Martin, I think there's a much greater chance for the prosecution to have a conviction.
All right, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Jury notices went out to over 500 Seminole County residents. The argument's been made. Can you pick a fair jury in Seminole County? What's your take on it?
Well, we've never had a case in American history where we've not been able to pick a jury. Now, that doesn't mean that we've always picked fair juries.
Okay.
So we hope that that's what's going to happen. And it's becoming much harder in this age of technology and blogs and the internet. Of course, so many more people know about what's going on. The issue is not whether they've heard or know anything about the case, but whether they can render a fair and impartial verdict. And I think they'll be able to find that eventually. There's a lot of people that just shut off their TVs, don't have TVs, don't want anything to do with any crime stories. So there are going to be some people out there. The interesting spin on that, though, is what kind of person is that who in fact goes on a jury? Because you presume they're none of our watchers right now, because they would be people who are watching regularly and following the news. So what kind of person is it that would go on a jury who really knows nothing about the case? Now, again, they can know something about it, but have they formed an opinion that they won't move off of? And what's so unique about this particular case is it's so polarized. You hear people so strongly on one side or the other, and not a lot of people in the middle. The key is going to be to find some of those people in the middle and who have not formed opinions in such a strong fashion that they're unwilling or unable to render a fair and impartial verdict.
Well, George Zimmerman's attorney, Mark O'Mara, is thinking it's possible, he said, that jury selection could take weeks. And at one point, the whole entire trial was supposed to last 2 to 3 weeks, but just picking a jury could take that long. Do you think it will take that long to pick a jury?
The best estimate is 2 to 3 weeks to pick a jury, and 3 weeks or so for the trial. Could be more, could be less, but I think 4 to 6 weeks is a reasonable estimate as far as what this case is going to take from beginning to end. This is a judge who moves things along. If you've watched her in the proceedings, Judge Nelson moves things at a pretty rapid clip. I think she's going to streamline it as much as possible without waiving one side or the other's rights, but she's going to try to keep this thing moving. And they might get lucky. They might be able to find a pool of jurors who can render that fair and impartial verdict. But I think you're going to find a judge who's not going to tolerate a lot of languishing and letting it slow itself down. So, you know, there's a chance it could be a week or two, but 3 weeks is not unreasonable. As much attention as this case has gotten, and as much inquiry needs to be made to determine whether there's prejudiced jurors. Remember, a lot of times in this age, they're stealth jurors, people who want to be on the jury for one reason or another. They want to get a conviction, or they want to get on TV, or they want to get an acquittal because they feel so strongly. It's important for the jurors, important for the lawyers and the judge to ferret out those people so that they get really an unbiased jury.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll make for an interesting trial coming up next month. Thank you, Mark.